How's it going, everyone? You're listening to Free Kick, the official AFLW fantasy podcast, and we are really excited to be here for our Week 1 review, Week 2 preview, as we've finally finished the first round of AFLW fantasy. And what a round it was. How is it going, gang? But I'll start off with specifically Liam.
Yeah, look, it's great to have footy back. Great for the preseason to be over. I personally think it there was a lot of things that we wrote, a lot of things that were said. It was good to actually have real football to talk about and watch. My fantasy team, not that much to write home about, but there's definitely going to be some things to talk about tonight.
Yes, I agree. I was excited I got to go to 2 games on the weekend. I think we were all there at the first one, the Collingwood-Carlton opener. And then I also got to go watch Noffy do not so many Noffy things at the St Kilda Adelaide game on Sunday. It was quite cold. Footy starting 2 weeks earlier this season, and I can feel it. Like, it's cold at these games still. Will, you also got to a couple games on the weekend.
I did, as you said. We got to the first game of the season, which was very, very exciting. Love going to the season opener. It was fantastic. And also went down to Geelong to see my Cats play the reigning premiers, North Melbourne. Put in a pretty good showing for 3 quarters, and then the heavens opened up, and so did Geelong's backline, just for North Melbourne to put on 4 goals in about 5 minutes. But I was pretty happy overall, and it was great to just be at the footy, let's be honest. It was fantastic. So very, very happy to have AFLW back, and it's just fantastic.
And Jono, you started off the week or the weekend with a good win there.
Oh, I thought the Hawks were amazing. The Flag Hawk is back on, which is pretty exciting, knocking off the Brisbane Lions. But honestly, I think it was just a great weekend of footy. There were so many great games to watch. And, I mean, you look at the Rising Star nominees, Lucia Painter in that third quarter, have a brilliant patch. Chloe Malloy was back kicking goals. I thought it was just a great weekend of footy to watch all weekend long. I think I've still got a headache because I watched all 9 games, and
wow,
that much TV is killing me.
To be honest, I'm just a bit disappointed that you said that Flag Hawk is back on, implying that it wasn't already on to start the season. What's going on there?
No, that's fair. That's a fair call out. I need more faith.
Yes, well, I'm going to say that great things take time, and I think that is a good perspective that I'm going to bring into fantasy this season. Because it just takes time to get into that top 1,000. I don't know about you guys, but I'm starting off significantly lower than I would have liked. On the shipping report, having a look at how we did this week, I'm just going to kick it off because we do like to start with the bottom, and Bowers Down to me did not have a great week. A score of 1185 to start in the 6,500s. I've done worse. 2 seasons ago I started 10,000th, so At least we're a bit better than that. But, yeah, quite a few mistakes were made. A lot of this comes down to my impulsiveness and my uncontrolled desire to do random things at the very last minute. I did a very last minute decision just after the spaces before the Sydney game started, and the app spasmed, and I went from having 2 Piper Dunlops to 7 rucks. On my field, and then I decided out of all of that chaos, let's go with a really known entity to just lock in some cash gen on the bench. Let's put in Reid, Sydney's backup ruck, Caitlin Reid, backup ruck for Ali Morfitt, returning from injury, so had a great amount of time and had an amazing performance. Caitlin Reid was rivaling Paige Scott for frees against,
which is a high number.
Whew, high number, good chunk of the game in a negative score, finished on a solid 9. So
I think you actually might be overselling it there because I think she actually finished on 8.
Delightful. Even better. So my bad call is Reid, and just generally, like, after so many hours of talking about fantasy, why am I like this? But that's okay. That's for other people to diagnose. My good call, though, was my namesake, Bowers. I was nervous she wasn't going to, come back and have the same performance given what we're seeing in the rule changes. But Port Adelaide and Freo went at it, and she came through. Tackle heavy as always, looking absolutely elite. Put out my biggest score other than Noffy. Or maybe bigger than Offie. I don't have it in front of me. 1 point.
1 point.
Excellent. Thank you, Bowers. Who's next in line? Oh, Liam.
Yes. This was so I had a 1,199. I was above 1,200, and then I had multiple score revisions at random times this morning and last night. So I've ended up dropping like 800 rank since the last game finished. Look, it wasn't a great weekend. My main issue was just leaving points on the bench. I had Jess Rentsch at D6. I had Zippy Fish at M6, and I had Blaheen Bogue at 49 points. She was far too good for my field, where instead I fielded Kosh from GWS for a 20.
Ooh.
So I really did just leave so many points there for the taking. I will say that my good call was, Mel, you talked about being impulsive. Like, I came around to it very late in the piece, but Cambridge McCormick looked excellent in the second half. Very happy with that pick so far. Looks like it could be 20 points of value. I joked about it in a tweet last week, but really does look a little bit Tani Evansy in the way that she's playing at the moment. So I'm very happy with that call.
That's a great call. And Jono was saying earlier in the week, like, when are we going to start taking Cambridge McCormick seriously as a pick? And very glad to see you actually did it and that it paid off.
What are the few things that paid off on the weekend?
Our drafted team then, the free kick drafted team that we made on our round 1 preview episode last week, installer Reen, as we've realised, her name is pronounced Reen and not
Renee.
Renee. That's always good. Was in third spot with a 4,845. Nope. That's, oh my gosh.
Jeez,
that is
that's just won the week
rank.
by a long way.
Oh, yes. Yep. So 1,218 points for a rank in the 4,800s. Liam, you'll have to run us through this one because I can't say I've checked it too recently.
So I didn't make any changes from the team that we drafted the other night. So that meant that Amy Gaylor at M5 was not the play. Would have been better off going with Georgia Patrikios or Zippy Fish at M5. And then the good call was not having Grace Kosh and instead of having Blaheen Bogue as our F6.
Yes, that would have been a good call. In Lucas Rod, we trust.
In Lucas Rod, we trust indeed. I think, second best team on the pod. I'll take that for week 1, even if the rank does leave some to be desired. So a 1,228, which left me, just in the low 4,000s there. I think I also, Mel, got stuck into that last-minute panic. I made a lot of changes to the team that had I just stuck with the team that I released, that would have been way better. So Darcy Vesio was the one that hurt me the most, I think, with a 28. I also did a last-minute reshuffle to bring in Cambridge McCormack, which I'm very happy with, but I did do it at the expense of Elizabeth Georgiou-Stathis. So, not the greatest. Look, I think McCormick, though, did allow me to pay up a little bit of my forward line to get Montana Ham, who looked excellent in that first game. So I was pretty happy there.
Quite unlike you to be making last-minute panics. I thought you were usually quite cool, calm, collected.
I usually do my best to not be looking at my phone at those times. As long as they're named, I just walk away. But because we were live and we were chatting and I was just sitting there with the team in front of me, oh boy, I really ran through it.
Yep. And I mean, speaking of unusual starts to the season, Will, tell us about your score.
Yes, I have top scored. Stop the presses, stop everything. We're done. I've scored a 1,267, which puts me just outside the top 2,078. But yeah, basically my good call for the week was basically Jono's not so good call, which was picking Georgiou-Stathis. I was very happy with that pick. An 87, very happy with that. And also trusting in Lucas Rod as well. I got the 280s in that back line, so I was very happy with my top-heavy back line. My bad call, I also went for Darcy Vesio to save a bit of money, and I'll be honest, in that first game, they looked really good in the role. It's just, against Collingwood, there wasn't that much to do, and they only scored a 28.
DV's been dragged up to the back of stoppage away from cheap chips. It was a very frustrating watching that first game. Just a confluence of really frustrating factors.
Yeah, and my only other one that was a bit disappointing was I picked Piper Dunlop on field over Courtney Murphy, which I probably should have seen Courtney Murphy scoring a bit better against GWS. I thought Piper Dunlop actually looked really good against the Premiership ruck Kim Rennie. Did go off for the best part of a quarter due to a facial laceration, but as a Geelong supporter, pretty happy with Piper Dunlop. As a fantasy pick on field, maybe less so, but not too bad overall.
That's the fun of the round one surprises, I guess, of which there will be a lot more to talk through later. But first, Will, why don't you take us through the watch and wait scoreboard?
Yes, the watch and wait scoreboard returns for 2025. And being the first week, we basically just talk about who's done the best. And that is Ismail E. with How You Bowen, which is a ripper team name. Top scored with a 1,444. And apparently by doing rookie ruck strats, which I'm all for, as I'm doing it myself.
Huge.
Yeah, I mean, they've taken an extra step, though, because they had Havana Harris on the bench, and they went, you know what, I'm taking it. Their on-field ruck is Ellie Simmons from the Hawks, who didn't play, is very unlikely to play. It's a unique strat to start the year. I think they're banking on early points.
Going for an emergency loophole in round one, wild. The top 100 sits at a 1355. Matthew G's, this one's for the girls. A very solid score there. So about just under 100 points to get you into that 100 from the top score. And our free kick league currently has 17 coaches in the top 100. None of us, obviously. So far, it's a bit of spread of the scores, but again, around where we are in the lower rankings, only 40 points between Jono and I, and yet there's a 2,000 rank difference. So
Oof.
It's pretty tight in the middle. Probably going to be a fair bit of shifting around of ranks in the next 3 weeks. So if you haven't started too well, don't be too disheartened. There's plenty of chances to get back.
Thank you for those inspirational words. I will cling to that for the coming weeks.
You're most welcome.
So, our hot topics this week, we're going to start off with the new normal. So a couple of rule changes coming into round one, and boy, have they wreaked havoc on some of the fantasy scoring potential. Liam, I know this is something you're quite passionate about. Take us through the stats of the rule changes and what we've seen come through on a fantasy impact for players.
Yes, I can absolutely do that. So, headline, as we kind of discussed throughout the preseason, kind of once we'd seen that first set of official practice matches, I was hot on the idea that this was really going to have an impact on scoring and the way the game was played. First up, ruck contests, based on some, albeit rough and ready, Excel spreadsheeting. 84 ruck contests per game last year. This year, as of round one, so very small sample size, only 9 games versus basically 110 last year, at 58.16 per game this year. So we're down 26 ruck contests a game, which is a huge drop. And it really is had a massive impact kind of on some other stats that kind of flow through as well. So the one that I put out on Twitter, for those that follow, average number of clearances last year was 28.5. There was no team that had more than 27 on the weekend. And the average was 22.7. There were nearly 5 more free kicks a game, which I'm assuming are almost nearly all holding the ball. Tackles were down 8 per game. Uncontested marks were up 10 per game. Marks were up 10 per game. So nearly all the gains in marks were in uncontested marks. Hit-outs were down from 33 on average per team per game to 22 on average per team per game. And the other one that I found really fascinating is I did some more rough and ready spreadsheeting. Last year, CBAs made up roughly 17% of ruck contests. This year, they make up nearly 24%. So nearly a quarter of all stoppages are centre bounce ball ups. So there are a whole bunch of other things that are kind of down or moved as a result this year. Interestingly enough, fantasy points are actually up about 3%. Not a huge amount and not something I'd be willing to speak to too much. That feels like it could be absolutely a sample size thing. But fascinating to see that these rules have absolutely had an impact on the number of repeat stoppages. I feel like it fluctuated from game to game because the rules haven't necessarily changed how they've been written, but the interpretation on what a genuine attempt is to get rid of the ball is the one where umpires have been told to tighten it up and really start calling it more often. So I feel like we're going to get some games that are going to be more impacted than others. And it's going to have some huge impacts on the type of players that score well.
What do we think it means for the midfielders there? Does it steer you off?
I think it probably affects most the tackle-heavy midfielders. We know how good Noffy is with the tackles normally, still had 8 this week, and to be fair on Noffy, her ability to rack up the ball with kicks was basically what jumped up her average a bit last year as well. So I think that there's a few midfielders that might just give a bit of pause for thought. Jono, got any thoughts there?
Yeah, my thoughts are sort of twofold. One is I do worry about these players that are stoppage clearance players. So someone like Charlie Rowbottom is someone that I'm looking at potentially trading out this week just because I'm a little bit worried about, how they're going to go off the balls on the outside more. They're obviously a great mark, but, it adds a whole extra dynamic to the game. They're not just going to be in their element. They're going to have to show that they've got the other skills that are going to keep that average as high as it once was. So I'm a little worried there. The other thing is I'm looking at how the Sunday games responded, because I think after that Saturday in particular, that there were so many games on the Saturday where it was just so many holding the balls. The Brisbane Hawthorn game, everyone was just tapping it on. Taking possession was not the vibe. If you thought you were going to be tackled, you're just tapping it in front of you and waiting till you're clear. And so if you look at those teams, neither of them cracked 1,000 fantasy points. So I'm just wondering, is that sort of how teams are going to end up responding long term? Because the free kick counts on the Sunday were a lot lower. I think it was 16 as opposed to 20 per team. So just a little interesting in my mind, comparing those two.
That is really interesting because, the whole purpose of this is not to ruin our fantasy scores. It's to make the game faster flowing, kind of capitalising on the momentum and being able to ease congestion from not having so many ruck stoppages. And it does look like that happened. Like we did definitely see a quicker moving, kind of more spaced out games. Yeah, I had one final question, and it is a question for the group. In terms of the rucks, so I didn't get the ruck clearances stats. I was lazy and got hit-outs because it was easier to pull. And the average hit-outs, 34 last season, 23 this season. So that's a 33% decrease. That is massive. And yes, it's only 9 games of the season, but still 33% down on ruck hit-outs is huge. It looks like Jess Allen, for example, though, someone that has 50% of her points, her average points last season came from hit-outs. And that's someone that you could be quite concerned about saying, if there's 33% less hit-outs and 50% of her points come from there, red flag. However, she has adapted well, and I'm not suggesting she's adapted based on these rules. I think it's a lot of off-season effort. But with only 17 points from hit-outs, she pulled up a really good fantasy score, and because she was kind of everywhere playing very strongly as that kind of fourth midfielder as well as the primary ruck in the game. Are there examples of rucks? I didn't watch all the games. So are there examples of rucks you guys saw that were historically primarily hit-out driven fantasy points and have, as a result, had their scores fall down significantly this season so far?
I guess, when it comes to hit-outs alone, I think they're losing points. But I'm also concerned about the flow-on impact of the ball's no longer at stoppage as often, and that's where they're getting their repeat tackles, maybe grabbing it out of the ruck and throwing it on the boot. If you look at the top, I think it's 11 or 12 priced rucks at the moment. only one of them actually went up in price this week, and the rest all were down to some degree. So I suppose that's the main concern for me, is I think it's just going to be, 5 to 10 points off every player.
Yeah, and how many weeks does that keep happening for before we hit a new kind of baseline average? And that's where people are fairly priced now.
Yeah. And so I guess it does make it tricky, because I'm in the position where I've got Lucy Wales. Who do I trade her to if I wanted to? I think everyone's going down. And so the question is, do I just try and make sure I'm, staying relatively within the ruck order? If that's probably the bigger question on my mind. Or do I go all the way down to a rookie ruck and then pick up from there?
Rookie ruck.
May I suggest Caitlin Reid?
Yeah. I was looking through some stats earlier, and I think my favourite one on Caitlin Reid is that she had negative 9 metres gained, the least of anyone this season.
I know how to pick them.
It's a real talent.
There's some silver linings in my first week. And actually, there's quite a lot of silver linings in the rookie performances that we saw this first week. Jono, the kids are all right. You've done a bit of analysis on the high-performing rookies.
The kids were incredible, honestly, over the weekend. I feel like there were so many performances. I know I came up with the name "The Kids Are All Right," but I'm cranking it up a notch immediately. I think there were so many impressive debutantes that, I think we're really blessed this season. So, you can start with players in the midfield like Zippy Fish and Lucia Painter going 97 and 95 respectively. In the backline, we had Jess Rentsch with her 75 that I think a lot of people accidentally got stuck with on the bench, but very comfortable, I think, putting on field going forward if she's going to keep that up. In the rucks, we had Courtney Murphy go 68, Havana Harris go 88 with a very impressive performance. She was not playing ruck at all, but really impressive across that half forward line. And then in the forward line, I think even though the scores aren't quite as high, I thought there were pretty impressive performances from Caitlin Thorne, Amber Clark, Hayley McLaughlin, Laura Stone. I think really I'd be pretty comfortable running a lot more rookies on field than previously thought. Initially, I was trying to keep them all off field, and now I'm trying to figure out which ones to add on.
I was so happy to see Hayley McLaughlin have a good fantasy score, because that was one that surprised me when you started mentioning her name, and I was like, yeah, Jono, excited for you.
I think against Brisbane as well, I'm really warm on this. I think she's going to be good against Carlton in the next week, and then I think we play the Bulldogs after that. It's going to be a good couple of weeks, I think.
So I might ask you then, Will, are there any rookies here that you don't already have that you're looking to trade in or put on your field from your bench?
To me, Jess Rentsch is the one that I want on my field from bench. Zippy Fish would be a great one, but I've already got five full-time mids. I've got Gabby Newton as my lowest scoring midfielder who scored a terrible 84. Zippy Fish on field would be nice, but for now it's not the one. So at the moment I'm looking at Jess Rentsch, and to do that I'm actually quite happy with Kyla Forbes, who scored a 58 for St Kilda against Adelaide, just to sit and make me some money on the bench. But there are so many fantastic options. It as you said, John, it's just amazing how good the rookies are so far.
What about you, Jono?
I don't think I'm bringing her on field, but I am going to be bringing Zippy Fish on field, I think. I thought she looked fantastic. I think she did that easily as well. Like there were kicks that didn't quite hit her, so she didn't quite get as many marks as I thought she could have. It's a very small ground. On a bigger ground, she's going to have more space. I think she'll get more run and carry going. I'm very excited by Zippy Fish, and I'm pretty happy to run her on field and fix my very woeful forward line. So, yeah, I'll be excited by that. I think Lucia Painter, going for the third attempt at pronunciation across this podcast, she was one who I'm going, that 95 was incredible, but oh my God, could you not have a more difficult role, like playing as the deepest forward in that West Coast forward line? Unbelievable that she pulled it off and pulled it off so well. I would be hesitant to put that on field. I'm just trying to figure out, is there anyone else, Mel, that you're looking at bringing on field? Are you switching to a rookie ruck now that you've, potentially got Caitlin Reid to be trading? I don't know. What are your plans there?
Well, yes. That is not by excitement over who I'm bringing in. Although it is the queen of time on ground, visible to my eyes, I'm bringing in Basenko because she is listed as a ruck and did okay. But it's more from the need to remove Caitlin Reid. Yeah, other than that, the Zippy Fish one on field is a conundrum for me also because I've got 5 great midfielders. Like, what have I done? Where's she going to go? So she might just have to sit on the bench, which is devastating for a 97. But
At least she's making money.
Yeah.
oh, at least she's making money, which I can't say of my current mid-utility of Ash Centra. Which, are we going to talk about Centra while we're talking about rookies? I mean, she had a great goal.
I
She looked good.
yes.
She can do a cool dribble thing that no one else can do. I'd like her to do less dribble, more fantasy, but that's just me.
Yeah. I think all of you, as we were leaving the game, said the exact same thing to me, but I believe Will said it first. So I think he gets dibs on explaining the Ash Centra situation.
Please.
Put it this way. Acentra coming in off a back injury, under an injury cloud, they've kind of eased her in by playing her a bit more up forward. And the Collingwood forward line is not a great place to be if you want to score fantasy points, especially in your debut. When she gets near the ball and gets around the ball, she looks really good. And I have no doubt in my mind that she is going to be a fantastic player. I just think with the way Collingwood is structuring their midfield at the moment, one of the few things Collingwood has always had is midfield depth. I think that Centra's probably going to spend most of the first half of the season playing up forward and is probably not going to average a huge amount. So I think Ash Centra is a player that we're probably going to look at next year as a low averaging forward with the potential to become a midfielder that might be a very good steal. Mightn't be as useful for us this year. I think she's a player that I'm happy to let her sit there and hopefully score a bit more this week against the Giants. But if there's another low score there, might be looking to move her on before she loses too much money.
Yeah, I thought her movement was it was great, but it was just a little bit slower. And it's a combination of she's coming in for her first game at this level, right? And you've got to get used to the pace of the game. She didn't have any of the practice to do that. And if you're coming off back and hip concerns, then at that point you're not quite pushing it as hard as you can. So I think that sort of forward management is there to stay. Yeah, I think across the season, by the end of the season, I'm thinking she'll put up a lot better scores. But by then, I'm hoping we have complete teams anyway. So it's potentially not going to be the quick cash just based on how she was moving.
And then maybe we'll move on to our third hot topic, which is believe it or not. So this is how much do we read into some of these other scores that we saw in round 1? For a bit of a recap for anyone that played last season, we came out of round 1 2024 where we saw some of the following. We got Strom 133 in the ruck, which was huge. And we were like, do we stick with this? Ash McCarthy with a 139 in the midfield. Should we have trusted those? The answer was probably yes. But then we also saw some pop scores in round 1 that we probably should have somewhat ignored. Jess Hosking, 87 in defence, which dwindled quickly after that. Elizabeth Georgiou-Stathis had a 5, which was devastating because she was 15% owned at the time. And then Serene Watson, who we were much excited for, only had a 37 last season and was 25% owned. So this was kind of like some of the chaos that we saw from last season, and we've learned what we should and shouldn't trust based on how that season unfolded. So we've got a few scores from this first round that we've got the same questions on. Maybe starting off in defence, we've already kind of spoken about Jess Rentsch here with her 75. What about Sarah Goodwin? Liam, was it you that was quite keen on her at one stage?
Yeah, I was somewhat keen. My only thought was, after having watched the practice match, it seemed like it was more of an outside wingish role with some CBAs, but not many. It definitely didn't seem to fit in naturally into that scoring mix. And then only scored a 41 on the weekend, yes. The 36% CBAs was good, but scored far less than the other outside midfielder, their main one, in Maddie Newman, who has again scored well twice in a row, if you include the practice match. So I do feel like it could be a slower burn as she tries to work her way in.
Yeah, I agree. Maddie Newman did look fantastic. playing on the wing there. She's someone that definitely caught my eye as fantasy potential, not so much Sarah Goodwin. What about Shelley Heath, 101? Huge score. We saw her named on a team sheet being like, is that her real position? And it was.
Yeah, no, it was unbelievable. I think she was, she's added so much to her game over the last little period. Like, she's always been a good defensive player, but I think there were a couple plays, particularly in that third quarter, where she really got them moving out of the centre, playing predominantly as a midfielder all game, and it was very, very impressive.
So I was about to say 10 CBAs as well, behind only Hanks and Purcell, so was genuinely playing as a midfielder.
Seriously impressive stuff. The only red flag that I have, or the only asterisk, is that Kate Hall was playing managed minutes forward of the ball. She played a little bit in the middle, but not very much, and that was all sort of later in the game. I'm a little concerned that once she comes back into the middle, someone has to get pushed out. And it's not after that performance, as good as Shelley Heath was, I think Liv Purcell and Tyler Hanks were incredible. I mean, that was the most dominant midfield performance we saw across the weekend from my eyes. I would worry about how long she's going to keep that role. But honestly, I don't think it's going to drop away in the next couple of weeks. It's going to take Hora a little bit to get back. So, yeah, I'm looking very closely at Shelley Heath this week. I think she might be on my trade target list.
That's very exciting. That's not someone that we were kind of expecting so much. And then Will, Elizabeth Georgia-Stathis. She looked fantastic. Do you think it's going to stay?
Look fantastic, going to stay, lock it in, fantastic.
Great.
She's got that distributor role, which is good. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, it's a great effort, yeah. I also love that. I think she definitely had the distributor role. I think she kicked it out of bounds at least 5 times.
Liam. Thank you.
It was a very windy game, but it was beautiful from a fantasy point of view because it was coming back to her, and then she'd kick it out of bounds, it'd come back to her. It was a great little setup.
Doesn't matter.
Distributing out of bounds is still distributing.
Exactly. It's all part of the plan.
Over on the midfield, we've started to talk about Charlie Rowbottom and the concern we have with her stoppage fantasy point accrual in the new rules. Jono, 72. I mean, I personally wasn't expecting super high things from Rowbottom, but I was probably expecting more than a 72.
Yeah, so this was actually my bad because I'd put these notes in and then the adjustments came this morning and it was adjusted up to a 78.
Oh, well,
so,
I'd expect a 78.
Big win there.
Fair's fair.
Big win.
We don't have to worry about it then. That's just perfect.
Yeah, I don't want to overreact to this one, and I'm really worried that I am, because she did still score very well in the practice match, which had the same concern with holding the ball. But she's such a stoppage player, and she's so dominant in there. And I feel like a lot of games, you sort of see her not necessarily spreading as hard as some of the other players, because you can see that there's a stoppage coming, and she'll run up, and then suddenly a free kick will be awarded this year. And then she's not in position for the next kick. It's just a different game, and I think... Like, how quick is she going to get used to it? I think she's a star. She can take great marks. She can run with the best of them. It's just a different approach to the game that I'm a little worried might take a couple of weeks. So I'm not sure if I'm comfortable running with her. There's probably bigger issues in my team, but it's definitely one that if I need to find some cash, she's probably the first in my team at that top end price that I'm happy to move on.
Yeah, and I was always worried about Charlie Rowbottom with Claudia Whitford missing the start of the year because those two played off each other quite a bit, and it means that Rowbottom's main support player, I suppose, is missing. So a lot of that grunt work really falls even more on Charlie Rowbottom. So it basically just puts an even bigger target on her back. Not that most teams are going, Charlie Rowbottom, who's that? But yeah, it's an interesting one to start the year, and even with Lily Mithen coming across, it still looked like it was Rowbottom or bust, unfortunately, for the Suns.
Georgia Patrikios, an 89. This is someone that I guess I want to do quite well, and I want to be a lock. Liam, what were your thoughts?
Looked really good. Looked to be definitely benefiting from, and I will say this, with a lot of pain.
Here we go. Drum roll.
A quite competent St Kilda game plan.
Hey! This is monumental for this podcast.
Depressingly,
New season, new man.
at least 3 people messaged and or tagged me on Twitter being like, I hate to say it, Liam, but St Kilda don't look terrible.
Really good.
I would not go so far as to say that. I would say Adelaide looked very bad. But I would say, like, Patrikios appears to be playing with a winger's mentality as a CBA player, getting involved in a few of those key kick marks late in quarters to really grind down the clock. A lot of disposals in areas that I like to see it. It helps that she looked good, played well in a win. These are all positives that I think you could buy into right now.
Yeah, in terms of buying into, if we look at the round change dollars, the largest 2 price increases, Zippy Fish and Lucia Painter, as we would expect. Did I say that one right? Doesn't matter.
Lucia.
No, okay.
Lucia Painter.
Lucia. Excellent. But then Tyler Hanks and Olivia Purcell, not rookies, both midfielders from Melbourne, are the next 2 price rises, with Tyler's 125 and Liv Purcell's 123. That's a large price increase for some pretty established players. Do we think that there's more in the tank to go up, or is this like them returning or becoming their new average for the season?
I definitely don't think they're going to average 120, but I do think they're still priced, under that 100 margin, under that 100 average price, and they could be very, very good this season. This fixture that Melbourne have is why I was really keen to start Kate Hoare all the way up until she had that knee soreness. I mean, I really don't see any challenging games across the next 2 months. I mean, there's games against, I don't know, Geelong at some point, which will definitely be challenging, but it's not a game where you can't score as a midfielder, as Jazz Garner just showed us on the weekend.
Before we move on to the rucks, anything else?
No, let's talk rucks.
Excellent. Let's talk rucks, and let's start with Havana Harris's 88. Absolutely huge. Rookie ruck, championing some of the highest ruck scores we've got out there. Spewing that you could have paid 300k for Havana, or maybe a bit more than 300k. Yep. You could have paid 420k for Havana Harris and got an 88.
I was so close to doing it too. I was so close.
Will, this is the other thing I wanted to say. I cannot reiterate how little the version of Havana Harris that played against Geelong was the version that played against West Coast.
I know. That's what pulled me away from it.
Correct. That's good process. That's good process. Just high variance results.
It's good process and it's hurt you deeply.
Shattered.
Sometimes you just have to admit that good process just means you don't get you don't get the beneficial variance, but you might have insulated yourself from risk.
Low risk, low return.
Now, Havana Harris, incredible score. I was so worried about the role because the role was as a half forward in a team that I'm expecting to finish in the bottom 3 this season. But then I looked a little bit more closely at their fixture. So it's Sydney, Port Adelaide, the Giants, and then Carlton in the next 4. It's not as bad as I was expecting. I mean, Sydney and Port are tough teams. I don't think it's going to be great. But I think at the very least there'll be opportunities. And she's not playing deep forward. She's pushing up the ground, and she had a lot of inside 50s because she does get quite high. So I think it would certainly be risky to be playing on field. But as a cash run, I don't think there's a better R2 option out there.
Do we feel as though a return from Jack Dupai impacts how high up the ground she plays?
I mean, I don't think so. I think her mobility is going to be the best of any of those forwards. And yeah, I just can't see them wanting to limit her exposure by playing her deeper. I sort of think giving her that free range to use her athleticism is the way you get the best out of that.
Yeah, I think that Havana Harris basically became a star in the under-18s by playing pretty much as a midfielder. And to limit her by sticking her deep forward, I think, would be a mistake on Gold Coast part. Of course, we can never count it out. Coaches have done stranger things. But, yeah, to me, Jack Dupai is the sort of player that Gold Coast need as a deep target with her experience to give them a good target rather than, just bombing it to no one, I suppose.
Yep, that's ineffective. Will, sticking with you, Breanne Harrington. Another surprise
Yeah,
score.
speaking of bombing it to no one, basically, Breanne Moody to those who have played in previous seasons and wondering who I'm talking about. Breanne Harrington has been an All-Australian ruck and is now being relegated to second ruck to just good. And with the way stoppages are going, thanks to Liam's wonderful stats, that almost seems to be a good thing because Havana Harris and Breanne Harrington were two of the highest scoring rucks and neither of them played all that much actually as rucks. So Breanne Harrington, very good forward craft, good around the ground, took 6 marks. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm willing to back it in as a genuine ruck option given she's at a bit of an awkward price, but it could almost be the preferred ruck role the way things are going at the moment.
Yeah, I think the challenge is that the run they've got coming up is Hawthorn and then Brisbane in the next 2 weeks.
Oh,
but I
easy.
think when their fixture
Easy
opens
teams.
up a little bit, I really like what the addition of Tara Bahana has done to that forward line. It's made it very imposing.
Yes.
And so, against a team like Collingwood, obviously very, very effective. And I think when they play teams like the Dogs or Gold Coast or the Giants, if you can get a run of those in a row, then I think it's going to make for another good score.
Yeah. She still had 53% of ruck contests. It was near perfect 50-50 split with just good.
But it's interesting because it was 50-50-ish on the ruck contest, but she only had, I think it was 20% CBAs compared to good 70-odd. So definitely getting much more of it around the ground compared to good in terms of the ruck work, at least.
Yep, checks out. And Matilda Schultz put up a disappointingly low 48.
It was against Mim Strom, though.
Liam, tell us about Matilda Schultz.
5 frees against does my head in. I think she might have even been close to first, though, for clearances, but only had 1 tackle. So at every stoppage, at the game with probably the kind of most, it felt like the most stoppages of any that I watched over the weekend. Oh, actually, no, that's second most to to the Bulldogs in Melbourne. I thought she still played well, aside from the freeze against, and had a fairly good day in the ruck for a lot of it, like more than held her own against the All-Australian from last year in Mim Strom.
Yeah, that's a lot. And she's got a tough next couple of games to match up as well with the Kangaroos and then Gold Coast. But I can see people that potentially don't have Schultz. If she's already lost 80-something K, we know what she can do. If she continues to lose a bit of cash over the next 2 weeks with some tougher matchups, she could be a really good kind of pickup after a few weeks because we know that the ceiling is there and that she can get us those great scores. Sticking with the rucks though, but we're going to move to the forward line for Imogen Barnett with a 79. Exciting option here, given that she's ruck sharing, potentially. Will.
Well, what was interesting was that, in a sense, wasn't even ruck sharing. 100% of CBAs in the ruck. So Sabrina Frederick didn't take any of the ruck work at the centre bounce. So Imogen Barnett is, at the moment, Sam Wright's number 1 ruck option, which is a good thing for someone who was a reasonably cheap forward. How that's going to translate against some of the more established ruck partnerships will be interesting to see. Not that Jess Good and Breanne Harrington isn't an established ruck partnership, but Imogen Barnett is quite mobile around the ground, has long been threatening to be a ruck option for Collingwood, but keeps having unfortunate injuries. So the role's going to stay, I would imagine. The scoring, be interesting to see, but I can definitely see a 60 average quite easily in that role.
Zali Goldsworthy is another one. A 93 for Zali is very interesting. I was not expecting that and was kind of somewhat laughing at all the people that had picked her in their forward line, being like, haha, she's not going to play mid. You're going to lose a lot of money. But then Elise Parker goes down and Zali's back in the middle, 80% CBAs, 93 fantasy points. That's a trade-in for me. Wow. I'm very excited to see Zali back doing Zali things. I'm sure you guys all feel the same based on what I've seen as your tentative trade plan, so I think we can say no more there. What about Bonnie Too Good? Oh, I mean, at least it's not a 5 to start the season, but that's 2 seasons in a row with a slow start for Too Good.
And an injury-affected score too. That's what really hurt to see. Spent a lot of this game on the bench or sitting far deeper forward. So 51% time on ground. So the time on... So the points per minute is good. It's basically at 1. And still
Great.
kicks 2 goals. It certainly was not helped by spending a bunch of the third quarter off the ground. And I was really concerned that she wasn't going to be coming back at all. Did come back on. It's going to be a tough one. It's going to be a real watch to see on her role. Probably sitting 20 metres further back, 25 metres further back up the ground than I would prefer as an Essendon fan, as a fantasy fan. And the one who actually was playing a little bit higher was Brooke Walker, who actually looked pretty solid. So I do wonder what's going to happen on that front. I still feel like, at the very least, like the same 63 that she averaged in season 7, so her first as captain, is a more reasonable expectation. But it's certainly no certainty, and it was the player that, amongst much uncertainty and with the role of Zali Goldsworthy, I'd said, really could be F1, and it does not look like it is going to be the case if the role continues as it is at the moment. It's just that she's so cheap that she just hit her average, whatever she was priced at.
Yeah, at only 500k, I mean, that's a low score, but I don't see her going anywhere in fantasy teams. That's not worth trading out for. But then over at Port Adelaide, Ash Woodland and Kirsty Lamb put up some pretty good scores, and Ash Woodland is someone that we've been particularly excited about in the past. Well, at least she was in my fantasy side for a bit of the preseason. What are you thinking there, Jono? Is this someone that we trade into? Because did you start with either?
Yeah, I didn't start with either, but this is one which I think I messaged Will at halftime, and I said, I can't believe we're going to go into a second season in a row where Ash Woodland puts up a great first round score, and then I trade her in and she absolutely ruins my team. Because she looked fantastic against Fremantle. Played, 36% CBAs, but I think it was more than that. I think she was sort of pushing up from half forward often and playing very high up the ground. It was a really good game from her, and similar for Kirsty Lamb. I think they were alternating really that extra pushing up to stoppage. And I think they provide a cleanness that and a really good ability to find space that a lot of those midfielders that were struggling with, aside from Darrick. So they were very, very good. I can't do it again because I traded her in this time last season and I ended up with a back-to-back 30s, I think it was. And then I traded her out and then she did great and then I traded her back in and then she put up another 40. I don't know if I can do it. I really want to. I just don't know if I can.
So I think it's safe that you stay away from Ash Woodland. And you can talk about her as much as you want on the pod, but don't trade her in. Still on the forwards, I guess we can't really go past the Freo forwards here with Megan Kaufman at a 75 and then Ange Stannett, disappointingly, spending the whole game forward and only getting a 44. We've seen, Freo's midfield has been a question that we've been waiting to answer, and I'm really hoping that this is not the answer that we can lock in. But Liam, thoughts? I know you've been cooling on Stannett for a while.
Yeah, I really didn't like the role. I didn't like the time on ground. I think it was below 50% at halftime, which was really alarming. So the fact that, she gets up to 68%. If she doesn't, she kicks 2 great goals. But if it wasn't for that, it was going to be a truly horrendous score. Was not high up at stoppages, wasn't around the ball that much at all, lived inside forward 50. Had some beautiful pressure moments. I think she had a run of maybe 30 seconds with 3 spoils, 2 half tackles, and then a beautiful kick into space. So gets 3 points for what was just a great bit of play. But that was probably her kind of one standout moment outside of her 2 goals. Largely quiet performance, and I do wonder if she's going to be relegated to time up forward until Fremantle can get her back up to the kind of fitness level they wanted to be at.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree, Liam, and I think on that basis, I think she's probably my highest priority trade out this week, because I think that the next few weeks playing deep forward for Fremantle is only going to get tougher. So I'm pretty sure they have North coming up as well, which you never want to be a deep forward for. So I think, and realistically, I've got to trade out Darcy Vesio as well. So there's two big outs for me this week, and Ange it's got to be one of them.
Yeah, I'm giving Ange it one more week, but I think against Brisbane, it's a tough ask, and if we're not seeing a score that's probably above a 60 odd, probably going to be next on the chopping block.
Yep, devastating that's where we're at, but alas. Liam, did you want to give a quick 1-2 on the captains?
Quick 1-2 on the captains in Captain's Corner. I have been operating on the assumption that Ebony Marinoff would remain everyone's just locked-in captain. She's in 70% of teams. And that was going to be until we started to get some red dots. And now it turns out that first place, A, doesn't have Marinoff, and B, has a red dot already at R1. So, it's going to be loop-de-doop galore. And so, at the moment, given we've got no one who's been dropped, and there wasn't really anyone that I loved as a looping option, Ebony Marinoff is going to stay as my captain. I feel relatively confident in the fact that she will be above 100 every week. Once we start to see a little bit more of, how the league is going to react to the impact of these new rules, and whether or not the league itself might want to change the interpretation, it's going to be a really tough time kind of deciphering who else might be benefiting and scoring highly.
Yes, well, let's have a special guest on the Captain's Corner quickly with Will. If you were to not captain Noffy, who would you captain?
Well, I think there's a very obvious choice, and that's Elizabeth Georgia Stathis. But if you're not... look, I think that
sure.
if you're not running with Noffy, you're probably going with Jazz Garner. I think they're the main two obvious answers. Would you agree, Liam?
Yeah, I think you could make the case for Ash Riddell too. I do wonder if, Ash Riddell could also be considered in that kind of top echelon of scorers.
Friendly matchup this week against Port Adelaide too.
100%.
Yes, well, I guess that kind of takes us into the final segment of the episode, which is our trade plans going forward and our points of weakness. Will, since you are trading out Noffy?
I'm trading out Noffy this week. I'm going to do something that's very unlike me, which is make a big call and hope it doesn't backfire.
Wow.
Because pretty much we went into this pre-planning. We're like, all right, what's everyone's number one trade priority? And everyone put the exact same thing, unknowingly apparently, that all of our number one trade targets were Zali Goldsworthy. And I thought, well, what can I do to get Zali Goldsworthy? And I thought, I'm going to save myself $250,000, separate myself out from 75% of the competition, and back in Jazzy Garner instead of Ebony Marinoff. And then by doing that, I can trade Darcy Vesio straight up to Zali Goldsworthy.
I don't hate it. I personally am a little bit less risk averse, but I don't hate it.
I don't think you should watch Adelaide.
Yeah, it might ruin your Adelaide watching.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that our talk about less stoppages and less tackles is gonna continue, because Ebony Marinoff is just as likely to pull an Abby Dowrick for us and very much make it unfortunate, that trade. But you know what? I'm gonna run with it. I'm happy to take that risk, and if it works, it'll be fantastic. And if it doesn't, then we'll have plenty of great content next week.
You've chosen a rough time in the fixture to do it, because it's not as if you're not going to watch the Geelong game. But anyway, I wish you well, my friend. I'm
going to back in Geelong and say Geelong's going to keep Noffy to under 40 points.
Sorry, 140? 140 points?
Heard it here first. Per quarter?
Look, I'm confident that they can keep her to under 240 points. I think that's a fair target. So, look,
nice.
It's going to doubly hurt if she does go big against my Cats team. But you know what? Once again, I'm going for the big risk play, the high risk, high reward. And if it works, fantastic. And if it doesn't, well, we'll see how it goes. But I'm kind of hoping that Noffy can sort of keep around that 120 average at most, which will drop her price down by another 100 to 200,000, and then hopefully I can throw a Zippy Fish or a Gab Newton or someone up to re-get Noffy later on, having made some money to get Goldsworthy in my forward line. So,
Yep.
it's a long-term play. I hope to have Noffy back by the end of the season, but if she starts scoring 150 every week like she did last year, I'm probably going to be buggered.
Yeah. Well, we've got 12 weeks to do it, longest season yet, so good time to test out a long-term play, I'd say.
Exactly.
Jono, other than Zali Goldsworthy, what else have you got planned?
Yeah, so aside from Zali Goldsworthy, first I'd like to give a shout out to Hannah Munyard, who was shaping to be my number one target until her unfortunate injury that probably, I think she's still in hospital in Melbourne right now, but once she's eventually out, I assume we're going to find out she's ruled out for the season. But beyond that, it is probably Shelley Heath. I really liked that role. I thought she looked excellent. I can see that scoring continue. I don't need any better defenders, but I'm going to get her in anyway because honestly, I think she could be the highest averaging defender this season. The point of weakness, though, it's just my forward line. I think I only had one forward go over 50 across the 5 on field. So it definitely is going to take some rework, and I think that's where most of my money is going to go.
Yes, I also believe I only had one forward go over 50, and that was not great. Forward line is also my focus. Getting Zali from Darcy Vesio is going to take a little bit of rejigging, but I've also got this dire situation with my 8-point scoring rookie ruck. So I'd love to go to some of these other rookie rucks that we've seen have these great games, but I'm just not sure how I can get everything to work. The only foresight I had was I saved myself like 200k last week. Nice. In the chaos that was. So at least Future Mel has some spending money. But yes, I think it'll be Zoe Basenko as my new ruck, the lowest priced of the well-scoring rookie rucks. So who's come on down. I think I'm going to be her biggest fan this season. Liam, what about you? You've also got some ruck issues.
I am... Will has been playing in the run sheet and put down Cam Smith, lol, as my number one trade priority, which is an older meme, but it checks out. I think I'm currently looking at going and stat it to Zali Goldsworthy. And I'm just questioning whether or not I finance that with taking one of my midfielders down to Georgia Patrikios or going from Matilda Schultz down to Havana Harris, if I feel confident enough in running Harris and Dunlop on field. I'm still really uncertain on that because then kind of the other trade that I want to make is probably trying to find a better cash generator than Ash Centra. I am truly devastated that I didn't pick Iran Fitzpatrick. I thought she looked excellent in a I feel like a more sustainable scoring role than Lucia Painter, who is also extremely expensive now. So yeah, I'm really torn on the way I'm going to make my trades happen. I do think, though, that Zali has immediately become a priority, though.
And don't we love it? Zali season once again. Very happy to be here for it.
We were so down. We were so down when before the season started. We were like, oh, Zali's not even going to play midfield.
Between Zali and Chloe Malloy, both in the practice matches sitting deep forward, did absolutely nothing in the practice matches. We were like, oh, it's not looking good here. Both of them absolutely tore it up.
Yes, well, therein lies the end of our first episode of our Week 1 review, Week 2 preview. TBC on the name, stay tuned. You can find us, Free Kick W Pod, wherever you get your podcasts. We're also on Twitter, Instagram and YouTube at Free Kick W Pod. If you want to read some fantasy analysis or just general AFLW analysis, or if you'd like to support the pod with a subscription, you can head over to our Substack, which is Free Kick AFLW Fantasy Podcast, I believe. Something to that extent. And you can also join our league. Liam, do you have the code?
I do. It is going into the document right now.
Yeah, feel free to just read it straight out.
It is. I can just read it straight out. Yes, I do have the code. It is X4NB381I. And you can also check on our Twitter page where it has been for a few weeks now.
Thrilling. I can't wait to hear you read that out each week. Yeah, easy to remember. Okay, and on that positive note, we might wrap it up. We'll chat at you all next week. See ya.
See ya.
See everyone.
Bye.